Guys, welcome back. I hope you guys all had a great Christmas, spent time with your family. And obviously, really important time. We've been gone for a few days, but obviously some stuff's happened since we've been gone. The JUCO waiver that was released by the NCAA, a lot of information about that we're going to cover. Obviously, some people tweeted out stuff that was totally wrong. Other people have clarified it. Again, we're never going to tell you guys something without being 100% sure that we're saying the right thing. Okay. A lot of people out there think they know a lot about college baseball, put news out as soon as it comes out, and it ends up being wrong. And players could end up being affected and making decisions based on that information. So over the last couple of days, I've been able to look over some of this stuff and want to give you guys the 100% accurate information when it comes to this JUCO waiver and what it means for the future and what it means for current players. Guys, like 90% of you guys that watch these videos are not subscribed. So if you like college baseball daily information, recruiting information, development stuff, and then once we get into the season, covering stuff that happens in games that will help you as players and as parents, hit that subscribe button, hit the like on the video. That really helps, and I really appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to get right into it here, guys. Obviously, this created a lot of buzz on social media. Some people were posting stuff, obviously, that was not very accurate, right? Not very accurate. And what we're going to look at here is essentially some of the correct information. And let me zoom in so you guys can see. Now, I'm going to wait for some more people to get into the chat. I know we kind of started pretty abruptly. I know some people are still off Christmas and everything like that. But we're going to get into this. It's going to be a shorter stream today, guys. Obviously, still some Christmas stuff going around for a lot of people. So just want to make sure that we get you guys this information about this new waiver that was released by the NCAA. Because, again, I want to make sure you guys are able to make decisions that you're educated on and that aren't going to make you think, again, that, there was a lot of information posted out when this essentially kind of released that was totally inaccurate. And I don't want players making decisions based on, sorry, I got to fill some of this stuff in as we wait for more guys. I'm interested to hear what you guys think about some of these decisions. So put those questions in the chat if you are, if you do have interesting insight or things you think are going to happen in the future. But we'll get right into it here in a second. And we're gonna have a video coming out about it pretty in depth as well. So stay tuned for that. Again, guys, a little break from for the holidays these last couple days, but we're going to be right back at it. Daily videos, every day of the middle of the week, live streams talking about some of these changes. Really exciting time because we have a lot of stuff coming up. Right? We have Canes. What's up, man? Yeah, early AM stream today. I kind of I don't have much time in the afternoon just because getting some stuff done that needs to get done while we're around Christmas time. Yeah, Merry Christmas to you as well, Canes. Welcome back to the chat, Canes, of course, first on. So don't expect some of the people that usually get to these streams to be on here today. I just wanted to make sure we cover this JUCO stuff because, again, we'll give Ross a follow, but a lot of people out there are kind of jumping the gun. And I saw Walter B did a stream about this, kind of clarifying it. So I just wanted to talk about it as well. Again, I was at my in-laws' house, at my parents' house. So I really couldn't, I was debating on kind of getting on my just phone and streaming it real quick and talking about it. But I just decided we'll wait till get back for Christmas, get back home and see if anything had developed. Because again, that first night, I know you had guys in our industry, in the advising industry, tweeting out stuff that was just totally wrong. And I think rightfully so, we're kind of hammered on it. on social media because, again, I mean, you're tweeting stuff out, but we're going to get into it, Canes. We're going to get into it. Are you saying three years after JUCO, meaning yet one extra year of eligibility? It just well, we're going to get into it, right? And we're gonna look through the whole thing. So let me see if I can find it here. This is from a few days ago. So here we go. We're going to go right into it here. And then we'll have some clarification. Let me switch what we're looking at here. Okay. All right, so we're going to get right into it, guys. And again, any questions you have in the chat or anything like that, just let me know. Some junior college athletes will see their careers extended, at least for now. The NCAA Division I Board of Directors, composed of university presidents, agreed to a waiver for junior college players that grants them an additional year of eligibility if they are in a similar situation as Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia. So a lot of people, and we're going to go over some of the tweets and stuff after we read this, a lot of the people who were tweeting out as soon as this came out were saying all junior college players will get an extra year of eligibility. Not the case. Some people were saying, all non-NCAA. Again, this is another one of these rulings that doesn't mean in the future all JUCO players will get something like this. But again, for right now, these are only players that are in a similar situation as Diego Pavia, and we'll get into it a little bit more. But again, people were tweeting out like, oh, junior college players, every junior college player now, it affects them and stuff like that. Dan Dosky. Dan, welcome to the chat, man. Kyle, assuming there may be a lot more interest and attention being paid to JUCO as an option now, even though the rules aren't set, what's a typical JUCO recruiting timeline? When do they start evals? Are you talking about for junior college recruiting high school players? The thing is, like, everything is kind of on a similar, how would you say it? A similar timeline now. So the issue is that it used to be, Dan, that this is too big. All right. I'm just making sure you guys can read that. So it used to be that junior colleges would recruit, generally speaking, later than your Division I's because, again, there was no communication hard date. So before these communication changes, D1s were committing guys in 8th grade. They were recruiting guys in freshman year high school, sophomore year high school. And your junior colleges just had no leverage to get a guy committed for that because, again, they were holding out to see how high of D1 they could get if that was an option, right? So now it's a little bit different because that August 1st date for junior colleges are still going to recruit, generally speaking, a little bit later than some Division I's. But again, if you're like a Chipola or a Northwest Florida or, like a McLennan in Texas or, some of the good ones in Alabama, like a Wallace or a Southern Union, a lot of the ones in Alabama are really good. And in the panhandle, of course, of Florida, they're still going to recruit pretty close to the same timeline as Division I. Again, the problem that JUCOs have, and with this, if this ruling becomes widespread, they will be able to recruit a lot earlier or at the same timeline as high school, as Division I's. Again, some of these schools, like, it's hard to say because with everything, there's some junior colleges who are just no way going to be able to recruit at the same time as Division I's. But if you're a Chipola or a McLennan, for example, or a Wallace in Alabama, generally speaking, you're going to be able to recruit very similar timelines as big-time Division I's. So it just depends on the junior college you're talking about. But let's just say, generally speaking, thinking about every junior college in the country, they're probably going to get most of their commitments after a player's junior summer and into their senior spring or during the junior summer. Just because that's the point where, like, a player who's really good, but with all these changes is starting to think like Division I, probably not, even if I do get an offer or two, probably not the best route. Junior colleges then are like, hey, come here. You can get at bats right away, develop, stuff like that. And if it becomes a widespread ruling that every junior college player gets an extra year of eligibility or 1 year of eligibility or 2 years eligibility, then they're going to be able to recruit a lot more aggressive in a lot more aggressive fashion because players know they don't lose eligibility. And the big D1 schools are looking for proven players. They're looking for guys with track records in junior college. Essentially, if that rule becomes a thing, would give you a track record without losing eligibility. So hope that answers the question, Dan, but great question. So Pavia is suing the NCAA over its eligibility standards, arguing that his junior college playing season should not count as part of his 4 seasons of NCAA eligibility. The NCAA D1 board's decision came 5 days after a Tennessee federal court granted Pavia an injunction that prohibits the association from counting his junior college seasons, granting him an additional year of eligibility. The court ruling only applied to Pavia, however. The NCAA, in an effort to keep fairness among its competitive schools, granted additional eligibility to all similarly positioned athletes, according to a memo sent to schools. Athletes like Pavia, who were expected to use their final year of eligibility this academic year, are now eligible next season. Pavia played 2 seasons of junior college and 3 seasons of Division I football. One of those being the COVID redshirt season. Okay. Because of the court ruling, he will receive a 6th season of NCAA eligibility. The NCAA Division I Board of Directors granted a waiver to permit student athletes who attended and competed at a non-NCAA school for 1 or more years to remain eligible and compete in 2025-2026. The NCAA memo reads, if those student athletes would have otherwise used their final season of competition during 2024-2025 academic year and meet all other eligibility requirements, example, progress toward degree, 5-year period of eligibility. The NCAA also plans to file an appeal to the court's ruling in the Pavia lawsuit it announced Monday. So they're granting the waiver, but then they're going to file an appeal. Okay. And perhaps more important news, the NCAA would be barreling toward a more significant change to its eligibility rules, something the association suggested in its memo to schools Monday. The NCAA's memo reminded schools that the Division I Council is exploring a comprehensive review of eligibility rules to create a framework that will be sustainable and can withstand scrutiny. Okay. There is movement from college leaders to adjust the eligibility rule in a way that grants athletes 5 playing seasons in a 5-year time span. What? The current NCAA rules permit athletes 4 playing seasons over a 5-year stretch, often referred to as the 5-year eligibility clock. For now, only certain sports grant athletes the ability to play in multiple contests and still retain a year of eligibility. For instance, football players can recoup a season of eligibility with a red shirt if they play in fewer than 4 games during a season. Canes. So that means Miami has a bunch of guys that can come back next season. Well, yeah, I mean, if that's, again, it's like, what are we doing? The NCAA is talking about, well, this is going to take away opportunities from high school players. And yeah, of course it is. But then they're like, we want to push it to 5-year playing. That means I have one extra year. That means I went pro. So I guess I run out of eligibility. I don't have any eligibility, but I mean, these guys are getting paid, right? Maybe I can get in shape, and because I've, college baseball at the high levels is paid for now. I got 2 more years. I was drafted as a junior. I guess my 5-year eligibility clock is out the window as well, though. So I probably wouldn't apply for me. But it's just like, okay, so now like your college athlete gets to play 5 years. That's what they're going for. That's crazy to try to again. It's like, but let's say you have 5 years of eligibility, meaning does JUCO eligibility count towards that? That's the question, right? Does JUCO eligibility count towards the 5 years? Because then all of a sudden, think about it. If all of a sudden junior college doesn't count, I mean, guys are going to be playing for 7 years in college baseball. They're going to be 25, 26 when they're done playing. If they're like normal age and they have no medical red shirts or anything like that, I mean, just insane. NCAA's board ruling Monday opens the door for hundreds, if not thousands, of former junior college athletes to have their careers extended, if they so choose. As the NCAA suggested in its statement on the injunction last week, the consequences of such will be felt by high school players whose projected roster spots are no longer becoming free. So basically, they're like, yeah, think about this, guys. How many like really good high school or college players that were done with eligibility, but they were they're that like, maybe it's a bigger percentage of college players now because the draft is so short at 20 rounds. But those really good college players that don't really project professionally, who now are done playing, all of a sudden, let's say they didn't play in the fall, right? They didn't play this fall and they're a baseball player. Well, now they can like call up coach and say, hey, like I played a year at junior college. if I come back, do you think you got a spot for? And he was like a starter all conference player the year before. Now he can go back. And then that's going to create all kinds of, I mean, this is just college baseball is in a dark place when it comes to high school players. Again, guys, if you're looking for help in the recruiting process, fill out that eval request. It's just gonna, everything. Every time I get on stream, it's getting harder and harder for high school players to find a place where they're going to have a shot to play, right? It's becoming ridiculous. The decision comes amid an unstable, somewhat chaotic time, too. Yeah, that's an understatement. Schools are scrambling to adhere to new rules imposed as part of the NCAA's landmark settlement of the House antitrust case, including stricter limitation on the size of rosters, which, again, you guys saw in my video. People are now challenging the size of rosters in court. Like, why does the roster size have to decrease? We're giving more money. Why do we have to decrease roster sizes, right? So that's being challenged. More than 4,000 roster spots are expected to be cut among the power leagues alone. So among all sports in just the Power 4 conferences, over 4,000 roster spots going to be taken away from athletes. Just think about that, right? And think about, again, baseball is probably, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong. I believe baseball has the largest percentage roster cut of certainly of any of the major sports, definitely of any of the major sports, because you're losing 6 roster spots from 40. So that's a 15% loss in roster spots among just a baseball team. I went to Georgia Tech. I can do math like that pretty quickly, in case you guys were wondering. Baseball is the only sport that's really feeling this. Yeah, I mean, like we've covered it, Canes, right? Like women's soccer, I think, is losing one or two roster spots. Football's losing some, but like they have 100, they had like 120 spots, and they're going down to like one. So they're losing like 10 spots maybe. But again, it's like 8% of their roster size, and it's not going to affect them the way it does in baseball, right? Not even close. Maybe basketball as well, since they only have 13 to 15 spots. I don't know if men's basketball is losing any. One of you got, because again, like I'm focused on the baseball stuff, right? I know the baseball stuff. Basketball, I feel like, what are they losing? 1? I don't know if I haven't seen anything about basketball in particular. But again, they could be losing something. I'm not sure. Altering the enforcement of rules overwhelmingly supported by NCAA member schools makes a shifting environment even more unsettled, the association said in the statement last week. Kane said 1,000%. Yeah, we all know this, that are baseball guys. Everyone is adding spots in the big 3 sports. Everyone is adding spots in the big 3 sports? Can you clarify for me, Canes? Obviously, we know that we're losing spots. They're adding spots, but since it's so limited to spots, I think the high school kids there could be getting the shorter end of the stick percentage-wise. Oh, yeah, 100%. High school kids are just going to get the shorter end of the stick, period. Because, again, you're just not a proven asset. There's a higher percentage chance that you're a liability. If we think about this in assets and liabilities, a high school player is a higher percentage chance of being a liability on the roster, meaning you're just not bringing a lot of value, versus a portal guy. A portal guy, again, like I think Deion Sanders said it best. He's like the portal guy. I can see college game film. I know what he needs to improve at. I know what he's good at. I've seen him put up performance. I know the numbers he's put up. So again, like you're not always getting a perfect player in the portal, right? You're getting a guy who, of course, is going to have some flaws, but it's a lot easier to identify those flaws against college competition. So coming in, like if you're a hitting coach and you see the guy swing, you see how he's performed, you're like, okay, we could do something here, tweak something a little bit, and all of a sudden he's even better. Whereas a position player out of high school and pitchers, it's harder to see where their holes are going to be and where their flaws in their game are going to be, because the game is just played at a much lower level in high school. So a lot of guys that make it from high school to college, you really won't even see the holes in their game and the flaws in their game, and they won't get exposed until they're playing against college competition. So you may see a hitter who, man, he just looks great against the travel ball circuit pitching and all the pitching in high school, but all of a sudden, man, he gets exposed against college pitching. And I try to tell guys this all the time. You're the average velocity you're facing in a trial. And I go to I go to every travel ball tournament that I can. Like all summer, I'm in East Cobb, I'm at Lake Point, I'm over in Hoover, down in Florida, whatever. The average velocity you're facing in these games is like 82, maybe. Like you're going to face a really good pitcher. But what I try to explain to high school players is that you face a high school pitcher who's a D1 commit. And let's say he's high 80s, he's touching 90. The reality is you don't know if he's going to be a star at Division I or a guy that gets cut in the fall, right? He may be a D1 commit, but he's not that good. So like when someone tells me, oh, I went 3-4 off a D1 commit. It's like coaches don't think like that when they're recruiting. They don't, again, it helps because they see you against a guy that's better, but they're not like, oh, he got a hit or 2 hits off a D1 commit. I want him. They're not recruiting they're recruiting based off, okay, how does he look over a course of many games? How does he play defensively? Stuff like that. I look at football adding spots from going to 85 to 105. They're losing walk-ons by adding more quality. Basketball is adding 2 spots. Baseball is losing 6 spots. Yeah. And that sounds right, Canes. Again, I think football is losing. I don't think they were at 85, right? Or you're just saying they have 105 scholarship spots now over 85 scholarship spots. Is that what you're saying? Because I know their rosters were always over 100, but if you're talking about scholarship spots, that's crazy. That's crazy if football is going from 85 scholarship spots to 105. 25% raise, basically, in scholarship spots, which would make sense why they're making, if football is getting 20 extra scholarship roster spots, it makes sense why baseball's got to cut 6. That makes sense now. Because again, football dictates everything. So football's getting more roster spots. Because guys, remember this, like baseball, you have a certain amount of roster spots on the team. In the past, that were like 32 was your scholarship. 32 players could be on scholarship of your 40 guys. And then 8 guys could be on the roster, but they couldn't have athletic scholarship. Okay, so Canes, Thanks for clarifying. That's what I figured you were saying. Because I'm like, I know they're losing roster size. But that's crazy that they're going from 85 scholarship spots to 105. Because again, that just means that's 20 more full rides for football, which makes sense why you have to cut scholarship roster or roster spots from baseball. Okay, altering the enforcement rules. Okay, we already read that. The court's ruling last week is the 3rd major court decision in the last year to bar. I lost my spot here. To bar the association from enforcing a rule, a West Virginia court made it possible for athletes who are transferring a second time or more to play immediately. A ruling in Tennessee, federal court made mostly moot the NCAA's interim NIL policy, permitting boosters and booster-led collectives to negotiate with athletes before they enroll. Yeah, so like this is what I've been telling you guys. Like NIL. So we're looking at all these things the NCAA is trying to, I think rightfully so, kind of bear down on, like NIL, now players can just transfer. Again, portal originally was you can transfer one time with no punishment of having to sit out a year. Well, that was shot down in court. So now players, it's just unlimited. Right. And so, again, the problem is with this, guys, as soon as one player wins a case against the NCAA usually has just kind of folded because they're like, okay, now we're going to have 1,000 lawsuits brought against us. And we either have to pay the legal fees for all these cases or we just kind of let it happen. So that's what happened with the NIL or with the portal stuff, where now kids can just transfer every year and there's no penalty. The NIL policy, again, NIL was originally intended for a company like a restaurant to have a guy at a promotional night and pay him, or make him do a social media post in front of their restaurant promoting a some kind of sale or a deal or a special, and pay him for doing that, which totally made sense. But what it turned into was basically boosters and booster-led collectives. So what you're seeing at all these schools is there's a NIL essentially fund that you donate to, and it's got a, it's just a big, massive fund of money that is kind of facilitated and run in part in the school administration, but also by the boosters. And these boosters, because they're not affiliated with the school, can basically negotiate with the athlete and say, because they're not an official school employee. So right now, a coach cannot say, hey, give that shortstop $150,000. But the coach can say, tell the booster, or even the school administrator, they can say something like this. Yeah, we're really looking for a good shortstop. Like, I mean, best case scenario, we could give him like 150. I mean, that's what we're hoping to do. We're not sure if we can. And then it's like, okay. So as long as he's not directly saying, hey, give that guy money, that's basically how it goes. And again, the boosters can say, well, they can give him more money. And because they're not affiliated with the school's administration and they're not an employee of the school, the NCAA can't do anything about it. So that's what it is now. Basically, booster. So if you're at LSU and your booster, your NIL fund for your baseball team is, let's just say, $5 million, $4 million. I know Clemson's is 1.3 as of last year, was 1.3 million. And again, like that could be different now. I mean, that's just what I had heard from people. LSU's is, from what I heard, LSU's was how much you need. Right. And certainly that's the case in some of the Texas schools with the big alumni oil guys. How much you need to get them. So this is, what it's turned into. And the NCAA just keeps losing these court cases. And then ultimately they just have no ground to stand on. At the heart of Pavia's argument is the fact that he and other athletes are now eligible to receive compensation from boosters and soon from schools through the House Settlement's revenue sharing provision. He stands to earn at least $1 million next year in college. He says in the filing, it's money he'd otherwise miss out on if he had run out of eligibility starting in July. Schools are permitted to directly share revenue with athletes. It paves the way for millions of dollars, as much as $20.5 million annually per school, to be shared with athletes in a giant step as major college sports move from an amateurism model to a professionalized concept. So what have I told you guys? Like, college sports at the highest levels is a professional league now. We also learned something that happened to us this season in baseball. One of our big players transferred, and he had a small NIL deal with one of our donors for his company. And since he transferred, he still had to keep the NIL deal with him because the NIL is not supposed to be tied to where he attends school. Yeah, that's crazy. But that's what you get, right? That's what you get. And I think you're going to see like, especially the people, the boosters who are giving out this money. Again, it's like you're going to see players start signing contracts where they have to stay at the school. Or if they leave the school, the NIL deal is void. Because, I mean, that's just like, you're paying a guy to not play at the school that you wanted him to play at. It's nothing too crazy, like $500 a month. It's nothing too crazy, like $500 a month, just so the kid can live and have some cash in his pocket, but he still has to pay him. Yeah, and that's the thing. That's what you're seeing in baseball a lot. Like, your players that are not getting the massive deals are still getting like really good money, like living money where they can, they don't have to worry about, $5,500, $6,000 a year. I mean, that's not bad. That's better than zero, right? But again, if you're having to pay the guy when he leaves, that's kind of messed up. It's a good reason for athletes, especially players unlikely to be drafted, to remain in college as long as they can. So what have I been telling you guys for the last 3 or 4 weeks? I mean, really for the last like 4 months, but you're seeing the reason college baseball in particular is becoming so much more difficult for high school players to break into is because shortened draft, only 20 rounds in the draft. So your college senior or college junior who was typically drafted in the 28th round when the draft was 40 rounds or 50 rounds, or maybe drafted in the 40th round and had no more eligibility, he was going to sign. Or that junior who, he really wanted to go play pro ball and was 28th round and they were going to offer him $20,000 or $10,000. That's not happening anymore. And these guys are getting paid more now to turn down the draft than they would in their signing bonus a lot of times. So players are like, I'm just going to stay in college, man. Like, why would I go to the NFL? I'm getting $1 million a year and I'm the guy on campus. Like, And especially with this revenue share model coming in, again, that ain't going to stay at 20.5 million, guys. That is going to continue to go up. All right, so let's look at some of these. Let's look at some of these tweets and the reactions to this stuff. Okay, here we go. So, NCAA board votes to appeal the Diego Pavia court ruling, but also so this is funny, right? NCAA board votes to appeal. So NCAA is trying to appeal the Diego Pavia ruling. So they're trying to get it turned down, but also grants a waiver for junior college players in a similar position as Pavia, paving the way for the extension of the careers of hundreds of former junior college players, and probably in the thousands, not just hundreds. For clarity purposes, guys, this is important. As it is written in that NCAA memo, the waiver is limited to only those whose eligibility expires this year. For now, other junior college or NAIA athletes would continue on their normal eligibility course. Emphasis on for now, right? So a lot of people were tweeting stuff out like, oh, junior college players now are getting eligibility and, getting eligibility years back. Right? This memo or this waiver and covered in the memo is only for people that are losing their eligibility at the end of this academic year. So after the spring semester. So if you're losing your eligibility at the end of spring and you played a year or two at JUCO, you're eligible because of this waiver for another year of eligibility. But if you're in junior college right now, doesn't apply to you. If you're a sophomore and transferred from junior college this fall, this does not apply to you. If you're a junior, does not apply to you. Only applies if your eligibility expires this year. So even if you're a senior and you have like an extra year of eligibility because of a red shirt or something, doesn't apply to you. And a lot of people were making tweets like junior college is, everybody gets this eligibility now and this and that. I think the emphasis on for now part is the most important part because again, it seems like the way these things go. All right, we got a comment here from Nick Moon. I hope I'm saying it right. Thanks for the chat, Nick. I was in compliance at an NCAA institution until a couple months ago where I transitioned to NIL and external operations in recent months. This topic was of high interest the past week or so, obviously, and glad you guys are shedding light on this. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, again, it's like the problem is, and Nick, what I said at the very beginning is a lot of people want to be the first to get news out. And again, I'm going to try to be as quick as possible. I probably would have had this out 2 days ago if it wasn't Christmas and, not really out of town, but my in-laws are north of me about 45 minutes. My parents are south of me about an hour. So we were kind of all over the place. And again, I want to get this information out as quick as possible, but I'm not going to post it as if it's 100% accurate unless I know. So when the Diego Pavia case came out, I said, listen, this is a one court ruling applying to one person. This is not because a lot of people were tweeting out junior college players get 2 years eligibility now. It doesn't count towards NCAA. And it's like, no, that's not what it was. That was one court ruling for one player. And now with this memo, again, it's very specific. It only, or this waiver that's talked about in the memo, only applies to players whose eligibility runs out this spring or maybe this summer if they need to get a summer semester in. So I want to be as accurate as possible because there's a lot of players, especially in that 25 class right now, that are looking at junior college or maybe have like a small D1 or D2 or some D2 options also. And I don't want them making a decision like I'm going JUCO now under the assumption that eligibility doesn't count towards the NCAA. So again, I want to be as accurate as possible. And the problem is there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of people out there that are just trying to, get the message out first, which I understand. But like, let's at least put the caveat on your tweet that we're not 100% sure if this is exactly what it is. And again, it's like some people were doing that. Actually, some very big accounts in college baseball and advising were doing that. And I think a lot of them kind of got they got rightfully kind of vilified on social media. Because again, it's like so I'm reading from one of them. The NCAA they released a waiver that all current junior college players get an extra year of eligibility. Totally wrong, right? This only applies to players currently enrolled in JUCO. Totally wrong again. It only applies to people that are losing their eligibility that are at Division I this spring. Has nothing to do with guys that are currently in JUCO. And I guess at the bottom of the tweet said, the situation is extremely fluid. Stay tuned for more details. But why are you tweeting it as if it's concrete if it's extremely fluid? And the thing is, underneath the tweet, they said, for those questioning this post, I've consulted with senior authorities to confirm our interpretation. We're fully aware of our platform's influence and the necessity to communicate accurate info. We'll certainly address any changes should they arise. I don't see any tweets addressing this, any of the changes. And essentially, I mean, it was just vilified on social media, which again, it's like, it should have been, because you're tweeting out, literally, there was not one thing in the tweet that was accurate. Not one. Right? So, I mean, if you feel like your platform has a lot of influence, and I feel like mine certainly does, and it's continuing to grow. I see a lot of guys in college baseball or people in baseball Twitter. It's funny. A lot of our videos and a lot of our threads are getting kind of mimicked and copied that I see on social media all the time. But again, we want to make sure we're getting you the most accurate info. And so just always, if you guys are questioning, like, I'm hearing some stuff, just come to our channel. I'll tell you exactly what is going on, and how you should be thinking about moving forward. So let's keep going on this here. Should be noted that this encompasses all non-NCAA schools, which would include an athlete stint at an NAIA program as well. So it's not just junior college players that are now at Division I and losing eligibility. They're also any schools that were at or any NAIA program that is, I would assume, is also losing their eligibility this coming spring. That would apply. They'd have an extra year. Kenny Fullman, stupid. I can see the NCAA schools stop counting their transferable college credits. Watch junior college credits will end up not counting towards 4-year degrees. Sad. More high school kids who will be incoming high school freshmen about to be let go. More high school kids who will be incoming college freshmen about to be let go. So Kenny's not a big supporter of these changes. I can see the NCAA schools stop counting their transferable college credits. Watch the junior college credits will end up not counting towards 4-year degrees. I mean, I don't understand, because it's not like a college kid can do a post grad, they don't have to like be taking a normal, they can do post-grad classes and go for an MBA or a master's or a PhD or whatever to stay in school. As long as they're getting a minimum amount of hours, they're totally fine. And a lot of these fifth-year guys, like I was asking one of the guys at Georgia Tech who I coached when he was a freshman, so like 4 years ago now, I said, dude, how many hours are you taking? Because he's like, he's a fifth-year guy. He's got an extra year eligibility because of COVID. And it might even be his 6th year. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong. But his freshman either came in 2019 or 2020. Anyway, he told me he's taken it was either 6 or 9 hours. I mean, the guy's just like living the college life, and that has to be because he's already graduated. There's an extra layer of rules, because when you don't have a 4-year degree, like at Georgia Tech, for example, you had to take a minimum of 12 hours to be a full-time student. Obviously, once you've graduated, I mean, it's harder to be taking that many hours, and so the requirement for hours is lessened. So again, from Nick, they are doing this. As I always tell our coaches, it's a case-by-case basis. Also, court rulings change in real time. Facts matter, and fluid conversation in an individual's case is entirely different based on semesters used, and where and when eligibility. I'll read it. Let me put it up on the screen here, so we can get. Let me put the overlay up here. Okay. So I can read your whole thing. In an individual's case is entirely different based on semesters used and where and when eligibility is used. As I tell our athletes about NIL disclosures, etc., ask questions, don't assume anything. Again, appreciate you covering this. Thanks, Nick. Yeah. It's and my really the only reason I'm like I want to be super accurate is again because with what I do business wise, in recruiting advising, is I want players to have the most accurate information possible. And again, I don't want a player making a decision based on a random guy's tweet that is totally wrong. Like when the whole JUCO, the Diego Pavia case came out, there were so many people that night on social media saying junior college eligibility doesn't count anymore towards NCAA. This is crazy. And probably a certain amount of players made they committed on like the next day because they saw an account who has no connections to anybody in college, doesn't know anyone compliance like you, Nick, or anyone involved at the NCAA, doesn't know coaches. And they just kind of like, oh, this guy tweeted it, so I'm going to do it. And then now they're like hoping that the rule happens, right? David, going to be more common to see 25, 28-year-olds playing. Yeah. Again, this was one of those comments where I think he was under the assumption that like JUCO eligibility was made to not count against NCAA. Again, that's not true yet. Is it probably going to happen? Yeah, probably. Seems to me changing the rules, conceding that it's not critical to competition. Okay. 30 is the new 20. Chad Baker, some former players here tweeting at each other. Run it back, please. All these players saying, give me one more. I want to know how this will affect the NCAA's inflexible, stupid rule on degree progression. If degree progression isn't completely revamped, then there's no way a JUCO player who gets his associate's degree can do 4 years unless his associate's, unless its AA means nothing. Again, a lot of these guys are doing like master's programs. You got guys like trying to get like doing progress towards their PhD or like getting certifications for their going into med school. There's ways around this. I think people are thinking about like 4-year degree too much. There's so many guys right now that are in their 5th or 6th year that are pursuing MBAs or like, masters, everything. Also applies to NAIA and those who competed in foreign leagues, correct? That's a good question about the foreign leagues. NAIA does apply. Roster size. What if school doesn't want the player for an additional year? Then they don't. Right? Neil, that they just cut him. Like they don't have to bring you back if you're granted an extra year of eligibility. Sunbelt baseball. Make it stop. Go back to 5-year to play 4 with some minor exceptions. Players, seriously, you really should not be a student athlete at 25 plus. If you went to college right out of high school, can't fault them though now that everyone can make some money and not enter the real world. Yeah, I mean, again, like you got to remember this, guys. Like a lot of these big name college baseball players, they're not making in the millions yet, but some of these guys are making $200,000 for a year. So, like you guys are saying, hey, again, like you need to start making money in the real world and building up your investments, stuff like that. But these guys are making way more money. Some of these guys are making way more money than they will first year out of college, right? If you're making $80,000, you're going to make way more than most people do first year out of college. So they're going to stay. Smitty, welcome back, man. As a pitcher, if I can't play summer ball before going to college, should I just train? Yeah, I think pitching's a little bit different, Smitty. It's because hitting is so much like one thing about hitting in pretty much every major league scout, every professional scout, like my dad, he's going to be on next week. Like all those guys will tell you that hitting, like you're surely working on your swing is important, but nothing can replace at bats because at bats are where you get more confident as a hitter. You learn how to change and adjust your approach. You learn what certain things, like certain thoughts, like certain things that you're approaching, like hunting a fastball in this situation or hunting an off speed or learning in this, oh yeah, runners on second and third and no outs. Like I'm getting a lot off speed pretty much every time the situation comes up. You learn so many things as a hitter in your at bats. And that's where you're like, you can take as much BP as you want, right, Smitty? And throw as hard as you want and work on your, or not throw as hard as you want. You can take as much BP as you want and work on your swing and improve it as much. But until you perform in games, you're not gaining any confidence. No one has confidence just from working on their swing in the cage, right? You just don't. So hitting is a little bit different. Hitting, you really need those at bats because that's going to get you, one, you're going to face better competition as a senior. And then two, you're getting more at bats. You're accumulating more experience in the box. Pitching, you're going to get confidence. Don't get me wrong, from pitching in a game, but it's not quite to the extent that you do from training, throwing your bullpens, working on your pitches. So what I would say, Smitty, is like lean into the training. If you can't play summer ball, I would still recommend doing some. Playing, getting into some games if you can. But if you can't, yeah, train as hard as you can, man. Get the training in. Make sure you're throwing like multiple bullpens a week to stay on top of your throwing and develop that command. Like I've said in my last video talking about like why do pitchers struggle their first year in college? It's because the zone goes from here to here. Hitters are way better, so mistakes get punished a lot more. And there's pitchers that are really good, that have good control, but they don't have good command. And control means you can just throw strikes. You don't really know where it's going to be in the zone. Command means I'm throwing in the outer third. It's going to be on the outer third, right? And I talk about developing that command of staying around the edge of the strike zone with your pitches. But great question. Nick, again, progress towards degree may count for those who are still working towards an undergraduate degree, but we have essays who are taking, say, only 3 credits to be enrolled, but are eligible under the 9 credit minimum for the 9/18/24 credit rule for a sole academic year. Yeah. So it's, again, it's like, I think people just don't know, Nick, that like the progress towards a degree thing, once you're a post grad and you have your 4-year degree, like guys can be eligible and not be taking, that minimum 12 hours. And again, like you could have a guy, I mean, there's so many ways you could go about this, right? To make it to where they can still be eligible, right? The guy I coached at Georgia Tech, he's taking like 6 hours. And I'm like, dude, so you like, I was asking him, I'm kind of reminiscing and be like, man, that sounds awesome. I'm like, so you just like wake up, you have like 2 classes a week and then you're just chilling. He's like, yeah. He was kind of smiling. He's like, dude, he's like, it's sick. It is awesome. Canes, Boston College baseball coach said on a podcast this week, and he makes all his freshmen come in for the fall so they get in a routine and adapt to college. I'm still unsure about it. Or come in for that senior semester, Canes? Is that what you're saying? That pre-fall semester where they like July? Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about it either, Canes, because again, like I'm more okay with it for pitchers because I just think it's not quite the same for pitchers. And a lot of pitchers they're guys you want to start getting in the weight room. Pitchers more so than position players usually have a lot more room for physical growth. But again, hitters, man, it's just nothing, no matter what you say, nothing can replace experience in the batter's box, getting at bats in games. You learn so much about being a hitter, and you learn from your failures, you learn from your successes. So I'm the same boat as you, Canes. I'm not totally against it, but I just think there's no solutions in life. There's only trade-offs, right? That's one of my favorite sayings. There are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. So any decision you make in life, there's trade-offs. And the trade-off with going to enroll early at the school in the summer is, as a hitter, like you're not going to really be getting any at-bats heading into that fall, which is like now, it always was super important, right? I always told players 4 years ago, like your freshman fall is where you put yourself in a position to make the travel roster, get in the starting lineup, be that first guy off the bench. And now it's like, it's not even that. It's like your freshman fall is what determines if you actually stay on the team. He makes them come in the summer. Kids need reps, in my opinion. Miami does the same, but I never knew why. The BC coach broke down his thought process on it. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not against it. I just do think for hitters specifically, like the trade-off is you get them on campus, they're well adjusted, sure. Like most of your players you're recruiting, like it shouldn't be that big of an adjustment. But you're also, again, you're making sure that they're on campus, getting in the weight room, starting that strength program, but you are missing out on the development. So I think you're right, Canes. I'd like Canes, if you can break it down what his explanation was, that'd be great. Dude, Smitty, super chat, $2. Thank you, sir. Happy holidays, Smitty. Appreciate that, man. You're the first super chat on this channel's history. Smitty, you're going down in the record books. You're going down in the record books. That's pinned to the top. Smitty with the super chat. What a guy, man. What a guy. But really good question, Smitty, on pitching. Because like I said, I think pitchers in general, like development pitching wise, again, like in-game development is huge. I'm not saying it isn't. But for hitters, it just seems to be a little bit more important. Because if you have command and you have really good stuff, like generally you're going to have success. I've seen hitters with really good swings that look really good in BP. And my God, that's why the whole 5 o'clock hitter saying is a thing, right? 5 o'clock, for those of you who don't know, in pro ball, if your game's at 7, 5 o'clock is when typically you're taking BP as the road team. Typically, sometimes it's switched around. But, your 5 o'clock hitter, he's really good hitting at 5 o'clock. But when 7 o'clock comes around and lights turn on, he disappears. He can't be found. So hitting, it just seems like even guys that look great in BP, and the same is fairly true for pitchers. I mean, there are guys who look really good in the bullpen. They get in the game and they just, they're terrible. But that's not as likely a thing. Whereas in baseball or in hitting, it happens all the time. All right, so we're going to keep looking through this now. From Jonathan Grisham, I think we may have covered this before, but I think it's a little irresponsible for coaches to use the Pavia court ruling to say college athletics will change for JUCO moving forward. We don't know that yet. This court ruling was for one player, and nothing has changed, right? Just like I said, 1 second, guys. Let me grab this over here. I got to get my drink. I'm running out of energy. This actually turned into a pretty nice stream, guys. I'm just going to say it because now everyone's in the chat. I was not intending, this is funny now because now everyone's in here. I actually was not intending on streaming. I was trying to record a video and then I accidentally just clicked go live instead of record. And so I was intending to make a video about this JUCO stuff. And then I realized I saw it was like there was people in the chat, or there was like I saw like viewers in the top left of my screen and time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually just went live on accident. So, all right, it's worked out. We got our first super chat from my boy Smitty on our accidental live stream. Do you think that philosophy, styles of offense in college baseball will rewind back to the 90s with schools having much older, more physical hitters? Will the West Coast system fade away? Certainly the West Coast system has faded away, will continue to fade away. Scott, welcome to the chat. Thanks for the question. The West Coast system, with the way the ball is traveling in college baseball, it's just like there's no reason to do it. And again, for those of you who don't know, like kind of the more small ball type, like your Augie Garrido type offense, your old kind of university, Southern Cal, UCLA, schools that were historically kind of small ball type schools. And that was really, it wasn't just a West Coast thing. A lot of schools across the country did that. But I think with the inclusion of analytics, with the inclusion of, all these new changes in baseball, Miami Hurricanes, from Canes down there, you're just not going to see West Coast systems much. I mean, are there teams that are going to steal bases still? Yes, but you're not going to. You know how many sack bunts I saw last year in college baseball? It was like I could probably count on one hand, maybe two hands. There's just no one doing that. Because the ball, like I've been saying on these videos and on my stream, Scott, like the ball is traveling at such an alarming rate off of people's bats that don't even have like very good power that you're going to gamble on a guy running into a 3-run homer than bunting guys from first and second over with no outs. That like you're going to hope the guy is a good enough hitter that he's not going to ground to a double play. He's going to know his job's to elevate it to the outfield minimum. And again, I think both things can work. Like Coastal Carolina, like their biggest thing, right, was for years, and when they won the College World Series doing it, was like if we can get to 7 runs, that's our goal, is to get to 7 runs. So in the first inning, like they're going to squeeze bunt a guy home to get the run. Their goal is to get to 7 runs. And so rewind back to the 90s with schools having much older, more physical hitters. Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to have much older, more physical hitters because, you know, back in the 90s, the draft, a lot of people turned down really getting picked high in the draft to go back their senior year because it just wasn't, there wasn't the allurement of big, huge, massive money in the draft at that time. So you had a lot of players stick around to their senior year. You're going to see that. Yeah, you're going to see that now because the draft is so much shorter. There's a lot of really good players that just don't get picked, and now they're getting paid. So I hope that answers your question, but we'll keep talking about it, and we'll get to Canes here. Kids don't even know how to bunt. They're not being taught how to bunt. We still try to teach bunting, but we were terrible at it last year. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, Canes, that skill has to be taught. And I can tell you so many games last year, either I was doing the broadcast for or watching on TV, where a team was in a tie game in the 8th inning with a runner on third and less than 2 outs. And I'm thinking, all right, we just squeeze bunt here and take the lead, and then you go into the 9th with at least a 1-run lead. Nobody would do it. Nobody would do it. And I think part of it is what you're saying, Canes. Like they know we could just bunt the run in, but do our guys know how to bunt? And so I think that's got to be something. That's got to be a standard held on your team that everybody, you have a bunting station set up in the batting cage with velocity from a machine. I'll tell you, I was, not to brag, guys, but my time in college baseball and my time in pro ball is probably the best bunter in college and in pro ball while I was there. Now, I was unfortunately in an era where nobody did it, but, you know, I was an elite runner. So my dad, like, I learned how to bunt watching Rafael Furcal. My guys comped me for the older guys in the chat to Brett Butler. That people said I was as good a bunter as Brett Butler, who obviously is considered maybe the best base hit bunter of all time. I would get like 25 base hit bunts a year in pro ball. In college, I would get 15 to 20. And so I learned how to bunt just every day. I'd go out to my dad had an outdoor cage with a machine, and I'd bunt like 50 balls to third, 50 balls to first. That's all you have to do. You set up a machine and have guys go through it and just bunt 10 each side and switch, 10 each side and switch until that station's done. But you don't see that at all anymore. And again, you may not sack bunt as a team ever, but there's a situation that's going to come up when it's a 9th inning and you're the home team and the runner's on third and less than 1 out, well, less than 2 outs, and just squeeze them home to win. I saw situations like that in the 9th inning where all you had to do was squeeze bunt and you won, and they didn't do it. Do you think that the philosophy and styles of offense in college baseball we already read that. Okay. Now to your next one. That's right. I love how Mike Gillespie was like 10 plus runs a game in Omaha while at USC. He takes Irvine there, and then they are 5 to 6 runs a game and bunting every other hitter. Yeah. Like, and I think the Coastal Carolina method of like 7 runs, that's changed a little bit because now you guys are all seeing these games in college baseball. I mean, it's like you're lucky if on Friday night it's like an 8-9 game. Saturday it's like you're scoring 10 runs. Sunday it's like 20 to 15. I mean, it's like a football score on Sundays. now in college baseball. Versus when I was playing in 2011 to 2013, right when those BB core bats were brought in, the balls were still hadn't been changed. Your Friday night game was like 1-0. So you were going to bunt more in that era. And then when they changed the balls in 2015, on top of the bat technology getting better, now guys are breaking home run records from the BESR days, where we changed from BESR because we were scared pitchers were going to get killed. And now guys are breaking home runs from those days. So I just don't see coaches doing it unless something happens to where all of a sudden the ball's not traveling as much as it is right now. Because now in a really good offense, you're hitting 120 home runs a year in a really good power hitting offense. Whereas when I was playing, it was like if you hit more than 50 home runs as a team, holy cow. Like you had a power hitting team if you had like 50 plus home runs. Now it's 120. So think about that with 9 hitters, 120. I mean, you're averaging 13 home runs a hitter, 12 home runs a hitter. So you're not going to sacrifice bunt at all now. There still will be some teams that will do it because they don't quite have the power numbers to kind of have that approach. But certainly in the big schools, you're not going to see a lot of it. I think the players will take it as a disrespect, which is the wrong mentality. It's a team game, not a me game. Yeah, I mean, here's one of the things James Ramsey told me about 11, Mike Martin Sr., is that when you were a freshman, you had to earn the right to kind of do what you wanted at the plate. He was going to control the at-bat. He was going to 2-0, he was going to give you the take sign, right? And what that taught you is you had to be a team player, and you had to show you had enough discipline that in a 2-0 count, you weren't just going to chase something out of the zone. You weren't, because Mike Martin knew, hey, like in college, your 2-0 count, like you're probably going to end up walking if you just take the rest of your pitches. But he also said, and this is something Augie Garrido, which I love about Augie Garrido's philosophy, the sack bunt is not, it's about teaching a guy that he is not above the team. He's sacrificing himself for the team. And the other thing is this, if you get the sack bunt down, it doesn't count as an at-bat. So you're 0 for 0. But Augie Garrido said that. There's a great documentary where he said, I mean, the sack bunt, it's less about what it does for your team in the game. It's more about teaching your team that no one is above the team and teaching them it's a team first game. We're trying to win. We're not trying to have the best stats individually. And again, if you win, you're probably going to have better stats. That's one thing my dad always taught me. It's like your goal should be to win because winning teams always have better stats than the losing teams. So I totally agree. But some players in this era, they 100% will get upset about it. And James told me, he's like, that was what Mike Martin would do. He would basically wait for you to prove that you don't need to be controlled at the plate. And then all of a sudden you had free reign. But one of the things about Mike Martin Sr. that I didn't know this, I didn't play for him, right? But I played against Florida State. And we always came in with a way better offense. Like they had a stacked first 6 guys. We were always a lot deeper stats wise. And the bottom 3 hitters in Mike Martin's lineup would always be hitting like 200 or 220 or 230, but they all had like 400 on base percentage. And I didn't know that at the time. It was because like they get into a 2-0 count or a 3-1 count. It was like take. And so those guys were always on base, even though their batting averages were low. But once they showed they had the discipline, they were given free reign, and then they would become one of those like top 6 guys. Scott, I know I'm old. I just always love seeing the different styles of play across the country in Omaha. Yeah. And that is something, again, you will see that because there's always a school that kind of gets there that you didn't expect. But I do think most schools now are kind of running the same philosophy. Again, I think one of the big differences you see are, how Campbell's offense was run, Wofford, and now who's the coach name who's now at Ohio State, who went from Campbell to Ohio State, Justin Hare. He runs I call it a run and gun offense. I mean, they hit home runs, they steal a bunch of bases, they put pressure on the defense. I love it. And it works amazingly. Now you have Todd Interdonato at Boston College, who runs going to steal a lot of bases. They run a lot of small ball stuff. So that's going to be, I watched them against Georgia Tech last year. I did all 3 games of the broadcast. And it was like watching sleight of hand magic. Now, Todd definitely did not have the roster of players he needed to run his offense to the highest level, but certainly this year and the next year, once he gets more of the guys he needs in there at Boston College, I think Boston College is going to be a sleeper every year because you saw it against Georgia Tech. It was like pitchers had no idea how to deal with that type of run game. They had no idea how to deal with it. So you are seeing the different style is the teams that are just dedicated to hitting home runs. So they don't want to run into outs on the bases. But then you see like the Justin Hare type offense and the Wofford, Boston College type offenses where they're going to be running all day to put pressure on the defense. And I think it's a lot of teams are missing out on that value because catchers are just not as good in college. They're just not as accurate. They're not as quick to second base. No matter what your perfect game and PBR or pop times tell you, they're just not as good. And so you can really, run yourself out of a double play, run into a scoring position, and all of a sudden you're scoring. Brett Butler was a dude, 100%. Wally Pfeiffer, welcome to the chat, Wally. Bunting is a weapon as well, since lots of programs don't practice coverages and it creates chaos. Goes to your point, defense is unpolished right now. Yeah, I mean, what I tell guys that could really, and it was sad for me because when I was coaching at Georgia Tech, we had a lot of guys that could really run, but they just, again, no one teaches it at the high school level. So they get to college and you're talking to guys that are plus runners to even better runners. And I tell them, hey, let's work on bunting. And you put them on a machine and they can't bunt it fair. And they can't bunt it like they've never base hit bunt in their life. And I would get in there not having picked up a bat in 2 years. And it was like riding a bike. It was like, boom, deadened on the line. Nobody will throw me out ever, even if I'm running and I haven't run in 2 years. So guys just don't put in the work to make it into a weapon. And what they don't realize, like my batting average on base hit bunts in pro ball was about 900. So that's of 25 base hit bunt attempts, that's 22 hits. So that's boosting your batting average big time and your on base percentage big time. But guys just don't see it like that because what happens is they base hit bunt a ball that's like right down the middle and they get thrown out. And they immediately go to, when if I just swung at that, I would have crushed it. And it's like, maybe, but you have to remember this is a high percentage play. And like you said, Wally, it's a weapon because all of a sudden when teams know you're a base hit bunt threat, that third baseman's playing in, the second baseman's playing farther in. So now that 4-hole and that 6-hole way bigger. So it opens up. It doesn't just give you hits on the base hit bunt, but it gives you hits when you put the ball in play because the holes are bigger. Right. And what I would always love is I'd come up with runners on first and second, like no outs. And it was like, oh, baby, I can base hit bunt and I'm a high percentage chance we're going to have bases loaded. Even if I get thrown out, it's a sack bunt. So I went 0 for 0 and I moved the runners. Now my big guys behind me can drive the runs in. It's just something you don't see a lot anymore at all. You don't see it at all, really. He has a lot of experience. He's been a head coach since he was 28 years old at Wofford. Yeah. No, I think Todd is going to be, I think I'm excited to see how his offense does in the ACC. I think it's going to be really fun to watch, right? He's going to need a lot of guys that can hit for average, that can get on base. But I mean, it was like, again, it was just, you could tell that players had never played in the ACC, had never played against that style offense because they were just running. They were running whenever they wanted to. I mean, it was awesome to watch. And I'm excited to see what they do this year. Scott, Coastal Carolina shocked the world in 2016. Gilmore was the man. Do you think in the next 10, 20 years, we'll see another mid-major win the whole thing? If so, what 3-4 programs do you like? I think it's your Coastal Carolina is certainly one of those 4. I think Southern Miss, always really good. Dallas Baptist is probably one of those 3 or 4. And then that 4th spot is probably up for grabs. I mean, certainly you have like a Santa Barbara. You have what I would say is probably like Georgia Southern, who hosted a regional just 2 years ago. They're always very good. Haven't made it to the World Series, obviously, but they hosted a regional. So I mean, those 3 or 4 schools. I mean, in Georgia alone, the mid majors are really good. Kennesaw State, Mercer, Georgia State, Georgia Southern. They're all really good. They're all vying to get in the tournament every year. Coastal Carolina is definitely number 1 or 2. Dallas Baptist number 1 or number 2. Santa Barbara, of course. I mean, there's a lot of really good mid majors on the West Coast, like Irvine, Fullerton. So there's probably 10 mid majors, 15 mid majors out there that can really compete really well with recruiting with Power 4 schools. And a lot of times they're better than a lot of the Power 4 schools, right? So, I think in baseball is a lot more. I think a lot of parents don't understand this in the process, which is like part of what we do is help educate them on this. But, baseball is a lot more like college basketball, where like there's a lot of really good mid majors in baseball. I mean, Kent State up in the Midwest, for example, Wright State. There's what's the school in South Carolina? I'm blanking on right now. USC Upstate, really good mid-major program. We saw Evansville, what they did in the Tennessee Super Regional last year. So there's a lot of really good mid-major schools that I think obviously are, Fresno State, even though they haven't been as good recently. Like Long Beach historically has been really good, but haven't been as good recently. They're all over the place, man. There's so many good mid-majors in baseball. But that's a good question. I think right now for me, top 4, as far as chances to make it to win it all, Coastal Carolina, Dallas Baptist, and Southern Miss are certainly 3. Louisiana Tech's really good. Louisiana Lafayette, really good. So, I mean, there's so many. It's hard to even name. I mean, Troy, South Alabama. I mean, Texas State. Guys, there's so many. It's just, you can't even name them all. Love the West Coast discussion. I still wonder if the weaker recruited programs still look to use it. You would think, right? And you have to have some kind of competitive advantage, right, Scott? And if you can't recruit the high-end power guys, you got to figure out how to, and that's what Wofford's done, right? Wofford has been a 40-win program for the last decade because they're playing a speed style offense. Like they want guys that can run. They're going to play really good defense and they're going to wreak havoc on the bases, and they win 40 games a year. And that's why Todd Interdonato got the Boston College job, because of what he did at Wofford, turning it into a perennial 40-game winner and NCAA tournament qualifier, winning their conferences. And at Boston College, again, Boston College has a lot of history of really good players and really good teams. But I think in the ACC, it's a little bit looked at as like kind of a harder place to recruit. One, it's very good academic. It's very expensive. And, you're up in the Northeast, so it's cold. A lot of players don't want to go up there. But, you take his offense at Boston College and you're getting better talented players than you are at Wofford. Shoot. I mean, they could be a sleeping giant in the ACC running that style of offense, because teams are going to have to, you're going to have to game plan and practice. It's like almost like it's like in football where you're game planning against certain offense or a certain defense every week. When you play Boston College, you better be you better be picking off a bunch. You better have plays on. You better be aware of what they do. I mean, they were doing, they were squaring around in weird situations where it made no sense. And the pitcher would just fall asleep and think, oh, they're bunting. And then the runners on first and second would steal and there was no throw. They got such big jumps. So it's just, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of, I'm interested to see how Boston College does this year, because I think it's going to be really, really cool to see just how they compete in the ACC with that style offense. Which again, I mean, Campbell runs that style offense and they hit jacks. Boston College is going to be hitting jacks and running a bunch. It will be great to see how Ohio State fares under Justin Hare in that first year. I think you are seeing, again, what I've talked about in the past, guys, is that people think of stolen bases as just stealing a base, or just, a lot of people are against it because, you don't want to run into an out, which is like fine. But if you train your team the right way, you're not going to run into a lot of outs, because players are going to know when they should go, when they get a good jump versus when they don't, and shut it down. But what stealing bases does, it puts so much pressure on the pitcher. Because if you're playing against an offense that steals a lot of bases, you're going to throw more fastballs as a pitching coach. because you don't want to throw a bunch of off speed, which is going to be, again, a team that really can steal bases. You're throwing a lot off speed. They're just going to have a field day. So you kind of got to challenge hitters more, meaning your hitters are getting more fastballs to hit. And we all know your batting average on fastballs is 100 to 150 points higher than what it is on fastball, on off speed. So your team's getting more fastballs because they're trying to slow down the run game, but now you're going to have more guys on base because you're getting more fastballs. So I don't think enough teams think about it that way. Ren, hope you're doing well, man. It's Chris McFarland. Chris, what's up, dude? One of my former teammates in Pro Ball, former teammate with the Brewers. Yeah, AA Biloxi Brewers, or Biloxi Shuckers, man. Back when we were traveling on the Chris, I think we play together when it was that first year when we were on the road, or was it that next year at the beginning of the year? But I started an organization. My oldest bunch is 1700, just learning as much as I can with this new landscape. Yeah, dude. Thanks for coming to chat, Chris. Yeah, awesome guy, really good player. Are you in Texas, Chris, with your new organization? Love the info and channels. Keep it up. Will do, dude. Yeah. Hey, Chris, on my Twitter account, I got my emails there or my phone number. Shoot me a text. Maybe we can partner up with some stuff. But good hearing from you, man. Last one from Scott. Promise. That doesn't matter. Chris, more questions the better, man. Let's see here. How do you feel seeing the conference add Stanford, Cal, SMU? Do you think this makes the tournament in Raleigh more meaningful? Dude, it's gonna be crazy. It's like this conference realignment because of all the stuff with the Pac-12. It's like you got college player, you got the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference, which I've joked with all my buddies from Georgia Tech. It's like now it's the All Coast Conference because you got Stanford, Cal, you got SMU. I think it's going to, baseball wise, it's going to be really good for the conference because Stanford, Cal, and SMU, we saw what SMU did in football this year. I think they're going to be a great addition baseball wise, but certainly Stanford, is a top 10 program in the country every year. Cal is a really good top 25 caliber program every year, typically. So 100% adding more. It'll be interesting to see again, Scott, I got to look into this because I haven't really just thought about it yet, but how many teams are going to be allowed in the conference? In my estimation, there's way too many teams in the conference right now in the tournament. It's to me, it's like there's teams that get in and it's like this team shouldn't be having the ability to compete for a championship. When I was playing, it was like way less teams were in the tournament, which makes the tournament shorter, which is better for teams. I think because of TV revenue and stuff, they want as many teams as possible. So there's as many games as possible. I don't really like it. Because again, you see a team that barely got in the tournament, all of a sudden they're winning it. And you're like, that's the conference champion. Like in football, the best two teams from each side play for the championship, which makes sense. Baseball, it's not a one game thing. Baseball is not a one game sport, right? Any team can beat any team in one game. I don't like that. And the ACC's format in particular, I really hate because there's 4 pools of 3, and basically if you're the 1 seed, you only have to beat one of the teams, and you only have to beat the team that wins the first game, and then you can just kind of slough off the second game. So I don't like it. Second year. Oh, Chris, yeah, second year in Tyler, Texas. Yeah, hit me up, dude. Shaking my head. FSU just beat us out for the best two-way player in 2026. I'm sick. I know, man. I'm sorry, Canes. From Jahir, SMU doesn't have baseball. Yeah, but I think there are plans to certainly add, because now that they're in a Power 4 conference, I think SMU, again, with their history, they're gonna be able to add baseball pretty quickly. But we'll have to wait and see. It would really surprise me, Jahir, if they don't add baseball relatively soon. Certainly, SMU was killed with all their violations and stuff a while ago in the past. But as we've seen with their football team, like they first year in the ACC, they just dominated. So in baseball, again, in Texas, they're going to have access to a lot of the best players in the country. And now that they're in the ACC, recruiting wise for baseball, when they decide to add, they should immediately be really good contenders in the ACC. Scott, you're the man. Thank you for all you do. Hey, appreciate it, Scott. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for the questions, dude. Canes, we put so much time into this kid. This is sickening. Goes to show that you have to win. Yeah, and like unfortunately, Canes, a lot of times it comes down to like NIL stuff and scholarship stuff. Like if Florida State's, let's like, because you told me Miami, I think you said is going to try to get to, what did you say, 17 or 18 or maybe 20? If Florida State's at like 25, what, how do you, if they can offer a bigger scholarship, they're going to win out. And if they can offer NIL on top of it, they're going to win out. So you just don't know. We don't know. But I'm going to end it there, guys. Thanks for all the questions in chat. Chris, make sure you hit me up. You email me or text me, dude, and we'll. I want to learn more about your program. We do work with some organizations, like right now in the Southeast and in the Northeast, but we're looking for more across the country. So, yeah, we can talk about that and see how it line up. And I have a guy in Texas right now that is our advisor in the Texas, kind of Oklahoma area. So hit me up. Guys, thanks for all the chat and stuff. Again, if you're looking for help in the recruiting process, scan this QR code. We'll meet with you and talk about what we do.